Hello everyone, this is Nadia from Trooper Retrospectives here. Thank you so much for joining me for a kind of different video. I've never sort of done a video like this where I kind of just ramble for a little bit. However, I sort of got some inspiration with Tron Aries releasing now. And I also just released my retrospective on the Tron Legacy toy line from Spin Master, which if you haven't checked out, please take a look at. I put a lot of hard work into it, and I really enjoyed getting to talk about a toy line that I personally love that I don't see a lot of people talk about. But today I want to talk a little bit about the current state of Tron merch, as I'm a huge Tron fan of really all of Tron, except for Tron 2.0. That's the only thing I never haven't really checked out. Other than that, I love all things Tron, and I'm really excited to see it have a little bit of a resurgence here between what Hasbro's cooking up and what Disney released with Aries. So I want to just talk about it for a little bit here. First, let's start with Aries. While I'm not a movie review channel, I will say I really enjoyed the movie. I don't want to talk too much about it, but I want to really focus on the merch of the movie, which is basically nothing at this point. You can get a couple Funko Pops, which you can find in stock some places or pre-order some places. However, it's not really consistent, and you're not going to be able to just walk into any Target and find these just sitting there. And even then, we got three in total, which were just Aries, Flynn, who really only appeared in the movie for a little bit, and then we also got Athena on her light bike, which I thought was pretty cool. If I would get any, it would be that. However, I'm personally just done with Funko Pops. I simply can't do it with them anymore, even though I think the light bike looks cool. And we're also getting an Eve Kim exclusive, I think, later this year. However, that's really the only action figure-esque merch of any kind we have for this movie. Aside from, we also have a Hot Toys figure coming out who knows when. It hasn't even gone up for pre-order, and as a big Hot Toys collector in the past, I know for a fact that even when they go up for pre-order, it's going to be a year or so before we even get the figure in hand if we're lucky. Other than that, the only other piece of actual toy-esque merch I'm familiar with for this movie are the identity discs, which are currently only available at the Disney store online or the I was thinking of the word gift shop at the Light Cycle Run in Walt Disney World in Florida, and that is the Aries Triangle disc, which you can only get at the Florida Resort, and the Kevin Flynn disc, which they put up very briefly for sale on Shop Disney. I was able to get my hands on it, and I think it's awesome. I would really like to get the Aries disc also, however, you simply just can't get it here. And having seen the movie now, I think it's such a disappointment. I think there's a lot that they could have made figures based on this movie for. I think it could have supported a Spin Master-esque toy line. However, if you watch my review of the Spin Master toy line, you know it ultimately didn't work out, unfortunately, despite my passionate love for it. So I'm not surprised at all we didn't get an Aries toy line, even though I know for a fact there's a lot that we really could have gotten toys for. As for what those toys could have been, I would really have loved to have seen a similar 3 3/4 inch toy line like the Spin Master one, including characters like Aries, Eve Kim, Athena, and I guess we would have to include some human characters, which would be a little different for the line, like Dillinger and maybe his mom, I don't know. But I would have liked a small action figure line, as well as some of the guards and generic programs from the movie would have been really cool. But especially, I think this movie would have really shined with the vehicles. I would have loved toys of these new light bikes, of the ski that Ares rides in one of the best movies in the movie, of the tanks, the new recognizer design that's awesome, the big ATV vehicle that Athena uses at the end. All of those would have made awesome toys. They would have made awesome die-cast ships, and I'm really sad we didn't get any of them. I also saw someone point out on my Tron Legacy retrospective that it's a shame we didn't get the impulse technology that Spin Master used for the Legacy toy line for Ares, which I thought was pretty funny because imagining Jared Leto's face talking in this way is just kind of a funny thought. However, ultimately, I have to say I'm pretty disappointed by the lack of Ares toys, as I really would have liked to support them. However, I'd say all hope isn't lost quite yet. And that is because Hasbro has recently announced that they are going to be stepping into the grid and making figures based on the original film as well as Tron Legacy. I was really excited when they made this announcement, and while I'm still really excited now, they've really cut my expectations down by a lot based on what they revealed. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the Tron Haslab. I'm hugely disappointed in this item. They have it retailing for $260, meaning it costs basically $300 shipped if you're not a Hasbro Pulse Premium member, because that membership is such a ripoff. I got it for the first few years for free and enjoyed it, but it's really not worth what they charge for it. So in the end, you're looking at over $300 shipped for this item. And what do you get? You get an incomplete set of 3 3/4 inch figures based on the movie. I was actually really excited when I learned these were going to be 3 3/4 inch figures at first. I was kind of disappointed we aren't getting 6 inch Tron figures based on the original movie to go with the awesome 6 inch Legacy figures they revealed. However, part of me is also excited because I want to put these 3 3/4 inch figures with my Spin Master Legacy figures to have a definitive set of Tron figures based on the first two movies. However, my disappointment begins with the lack of character inclusion in this set. For $260, including only 5 figures is simply unacceptable in my opinion. The figures we did get are great. I really love the look of Tron, Yori, Flynn, Sark, and the program even. Although I do think it's strange and disappointing that the card art didn't get the likeness rights for the actors, nor do the figures, I believe. However, they were never going to be dead on anyways. All these figures do look great, have awesome accessories, and look great articulation-wise, and I'd love to get my hands on all 5 of them. However, my main problem is this feels like an incomplete set to me. If you're going to charge this absurd price for this set, I would like it to feel like it's a complete purchase. Like, at least I spent all my money and got something complete. But there are a few glaring omissions, character-wise, from this set. First and most obviously, from a main character perspective, is Ram. The fact that they chose to include the generic program over Ram is kind of crazy. The other obvious choice would have been a Sark guard. This was even one of the 3 figures that I believe Tomy made back in the 80s for the original Tron toy line. So the fact that it's not included in the modern Hasbro version of this is just kind of unacceptable. And finally, the third figure I really would have loved to have seen would have been Infiltrator Flynn, which is basically just Kevin Flynn when he puts the orange lights on his suit to infiltrate Sark's fortress. It's really a shame we didn't get this look, or the Ram figure, as they would have just been simple, easy repaints for Hasbro to throw in. You already paid for the molds, may as well throw these figures in and really justify the price. Or hell, for $260, may as well just charge an extra 40 and actually make it a complete set, in my opinion. We haven't even talked about the vehicles yet, which look really nice. I would really have loved to get my hands on one of these light cycles. However, I don't really feel like I would have needed both. I wouldn't have minded having both either. The display stand is a bit disappointing to me. I like it and it's kind of cool, however, it takes up a lot of space, and I would have preferred to have gotten something a little more tangible, like a recognizer or even the MCP Master Control program. I think a much better way to do this Haslab was right in front of Hasbro, which is really a shame. Mattel recently introduced a crowdfund for their McFarlane Toys toy line with their Harley Quinn figure, which has a few different tiers you can back, and depending on the tier and you back, you spend more and get more stuff. I think this would have been a perfect opportunity for Hasbro to do this. Imagine a basic set that is maybe like $80 and gets you Tron, Sark, Flynn, and Yori. A deluxe set for maybe 150 or 200 that comes with the guards and the bikes, and then maybe a final deluxe version that comes with the full display stand, and maybe that's the only way you get those repainted figures like Infiltrator, Flynn, and Ram. So that way, if you're someone who's a casual Tron fan and you just want some cool 3 3/4 inch figures, you could still get them if you want some of the figures and one of the bikes. you'd have an option. Or if you're like me and you're a real Tron head and you want to complete a toy line based on this movie, you have the option. As of now, this middle ground is just a terrible decision. It's too expensive for casual fans, however, it's too incomplete for people like me to back it. Let's next talk about what I think a lot of people were most excited about, and what I was certainly most excited about, which are the Tron Legacy 6-inch figures. As I said before, I'm honestly really surprised that Hasbro elected not to make their figures based on the original Tron movie in the 6-inch scale. However, I guess it kind of makes sense seeing as the two movies were made for kids of very different generations who now have different collecting habits. I think the older fans tend to skew to 3 3/4 inch, while people my age generally prefer the 6-inch scale. So maybe it's not a bad idea at all, especially since Diamond Select just gave us some pretty good original Tron movie figures not too long ago in a similar scale. But let's talk about what Hasbro's actually offering, which is a set of 4 figures as of now, as well as a vehicle. The vehicle and figure playset, I'm going to assume at this point, is Sam Flynn with his bike. We're also getting Kevin Flynn, Clue, and Rinsler, who comes with an unmasked Alan Bradley head, which is really cool because it hints that we might eventually get a Tron repaint of this, which I just said would have made such a good figure in the original Tron Legacy toy line from Spin Master. So maybe we'll actually finally get it now. I'm thrilled to see these figures and I can't wait to get them. Hasbro also commented and said Korra will be in a planned wave too. This is honestly reminding me a lot of the Spin Master toy line, however. Very similar first wave, however missing the guard and the clue sentry, and a second wave with Korra. I only really hope that this line actually gets to go beyond 2 waves, because these figures look genuinely fantastic, and so does the bike. I'm a bit disappointed there's no lights incorporated, however, I feel as though that likely would have been almost impossible while keeping the figures still articulated. I'm really in love with this toy line, and I really hope we get to see the whole thing come out. I'll be truly devastated if I get another toy line without Castor in it. And we need other figures that we never got, like Gem, and we'd also could really use figures from Tron Uprising, and like I was hinting at before, Tron Aries, as well as the video games like Tron Evolution, and even the recently released Tron Catalyst would make for some great figures. So ultimately, this video was all just about my hopes for the future of Tron. While I'm a bit disappointed in the Haslab, I think the 6-inch figures present a lot of really exciting opportunities. What Hasbro has revealed is super exciting. I'm very scared though, however, because just in the last few years, Hasbro has somehow managed to fumble Power Rangers, Ghostbusters, as well as a number of other famous franchises, which is really kind of crazy. So now I want to ask you guys, are you planning on backing the Tron Haslab? Are you going to be buying the Tron 6-inch figures? The Funko Pops? Do you remember the 3 3/4 inch Spin Master line? And do you think the new Tron line will actually last past a wave or two? I, for one, sure hope it does. However, my hopes aren't very high, despite being a huge Tron fan. Ultimately, just let me know what you think, fellow users. Until next time, end of line.